Friends, now is the time to invite one person who in fact feels the heat the most, and that is those assets are stressed, who have the risk of turning their NPAs getting larger and larger, and therefore I am inviting Mr. Ennis Vishwanathan, Executive Director of Reserve Bank of India, to come and give his views.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'll confine to stressed assets because that's what I'm here to speak about. Let's begin with saying there is stress in the power sector assets. Just to give you some kind of numbers, the power sector has 8.3% share in the total advances of the banking system. Okay, yeah. The banking power sector has 8.3% of the share of the banking system's exposure, but has 16% of the stressed assets. When I say stress, it's combined both the NPAs per se plus those which are restructured. This is a thing that we need to live with. I mean, it's there, we need to deal with them. So let's look at what we've tried to do. Where are the problems? Why are these stressed assets coming? Most of the stressed assets are coming largely because of the problem of implementation, number one. There's quite a number of projects where they are under implementation for a long time, and they do have impact in terms of cost and time overruns, which impact. The second part is even where the entities have actually started operating, there are stresses coming because the cash flows are not adequate to meet the repayment schedule. Why is that? Because maybe some of the repayment schedules were fixed in not scientific manner. So I think Manish referred to the repayment being to a very short schedule. So we have actually, as you must be aware, we've given permission to banks to lend up to 85% of the life of the project, what is now famously called as the 525. The 5 actually, the problem is, in the past we had the lending financial institutions which were lending for the term loans, and later the banks got into the lending to term loans, and they do have an issue of asset liability management when they lend long term. So we have said that which is why we have dealt with this 525 scheme, so that they are able to reprice the loans after every 5 years, refinance the loans after every 5 years, so that there is a possibility of they are able to handle the interest rate risk that might arise if they have to lock in their loans at a particular rate. Now, the problem that RBI has is that if there is stress, there is no point in not recognizing it. Our concern comes from the fact that if there is stress and it has an impact on the balance sheet or the quality of the balance sheet of a bank, that must get recognized. And the sooner it is done, the better it is, so that rectificatory actions can be taken. I mean, putting off the problem only makes it bigger, more difficult to solve. So what we've done, we have tried to put in place a mechanism whereby stress is determined quickly. In fact, which is why we have introduced the system of a SMA account, special mention account, where the moment there's a sign of a problem, the bankers are required to come together, rectify the problem if they can within that, so that the problem is solved. But it requires that the banks recognize it. Somebody did say, this is a general problem, that once an account is recognized as NPA, there's a problem of choking of loans to that sector. I must clarify, we have done that, Reserve Bank has done it many times, we have put it on our website as well, that there is absolutely no bar, I'm repeating, absolutely no bar in extending finance to an account which is treated as an NPA. The fundamental requirement is recognize the problem, provide for it, but if there is viability, putting more money ensures that viability, then let us do it. We have a detailed set of guidelines on when do you recognize NPA. There is the time schedule to treat an account as standard for the achievement of commercial operations, DCCO as one calls it. Given the Indian conditions, a lot of relaxations have been given in terms of how much extra time one can give to treat an account as standard, even when the construction is still on beyond the originally determined date, because you have legal issues, difficulties in acquiring land, etc. So we have almost a 2 + 1 3-year window that banks have to enable them to treat the account as standard. The second is the cost overrun. We have put a limit of 10%. We said that other than interest during construction period, this 10% cost overrun is over and above the IDC. So long as that is within that limit, the account can be treated as standard. Now the issue comes, what happens if it is more than 10%? Two things. One, again, we are not saying downgrade the account. We are only said that if it is so, you must provide 5% of the exposure. So it is not that the account gets downgraded to standard, substandard if there is a cost overrun beyond the 10%, but there is an additional provision because the fundamental problem is, let us say, any cost that adds to the project has an impact on the quality of the asset, and there's no point in not recognizing that problem. We do understand, that there are issues. So, which is why, as I said, we have tried to, within the larger framework of ensuring that the balance sheet of the banks do recognize the stressed assets, given as many dispensations as possible, number one. The second, in fact, we have, as you might be aware, originally we brought this 525 for a new set of projects. We allowed it to be used even for existing projects, provided they have already started commercial production. There has been a demand to allow it for even the projects which are under implementation. But the fundamental principle there is cash generation that is inadequate because the repayment schedule has been artificially fixed. You do that. But when there's no cash generation yet, there is no point in allowing that type of a dispensation. We also realize that the banks need access to funds from various sources, which is why we have also allowed them to raise what is called as infrastructure bonds, which is apart from the deposits. And there are certain dispensations like those bonds. There is no priority sector lending commitment. There is no CRR, SLR for that. So again, it is to provide funds to the infrastructure sector, power included. So the fundamental point that I want to make is, we do realize that we are not opposed to private sector. We do realize private sector plays an important role in infrastructure. That's why there is a whole set of arrangement there. But the banking sector has to recognize the stress in the assets. There is stress in the assets, and the way to resolve that problem can't be a one-way street where only banks bear the brunt. It has to be a process where both the promoters also take their own share in dealing with the problem. I think I'll stop it here.
Thank you.
And respond.